happen in more than 5 places that I can think of. The Chinese also put on the table, obviously, a very needed infrastructure. The point is that they put themselves at the service of what the African interlocutor asks from the relationship. And also very important, Western investors, not themselves the oil companies, but their governments, especially in the last 10 years, have been very critical of the human rights record of some of these countries. The Chinese offer sovereign respect and no criticism of whatever you decide to do internally. And that brings a lot of credibility with some African governments. But so much for the Chinese difference. In fact, once they hit the ground, they end up being very different, very similar to Western companies. First of all, because contrary to what the Chinese companies thought, they cannot stay aloof from the local conflict. They cannot go on saying, oh, we're not involved in this problems between the villagers and the Nigerian army. Yes, you are. That's why the villagers are going to kill your staff. So in places as varied as Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, Ethiopia, and Sudan, you've had attacks against the Chinese oil workers. And the Chinese are starting to realize that, hey, it's the same game for everyone. And also, despite some, we can talk about Ghana and this problem now between Cosmos Oil and ExxonMobil that has made the headlines. But in reality, outside Sudan, where the Chinese are almost by themselves with Asian investors because the Western investors sort of locked themselves out of it because of the sanctions against the Sudanese government. Elsewhere, the second and third biggest Chinese investments in Africa are the Akpo field in Nigeria and the plutonium field in Angola, both of which in partnership with Total and BP, right? So much for the big China-West sort of great power rivalry. There is a bit of that, but one should understand the nuances and some of the difficulties at the ground level. I won't get into details, obviously. The commercial reassessment of this region led also to its geopolitical reassessment, so that the region that no one really cared about outside specific niches has become a national security priority, not just for the Chinese, but for the Americans as well. We created Africane, a sort of integrated military command for the African continent, and have actually explicitly said that oil in Africa is for them one of the two main reasons, the other one being counterterrorism, why they are present in the region. Now, some problems that the oil sector seems to sort of have at this stage, and again, I really run through this. You have problems of governments reneging on good governance agreements. The Chad-Cameroon pipeline story, something we can get into in great detail. It seemed like a good idea at the time that the World Bank would sort of force on the Chadian government a very enlightened project for the good use of oil revenues. The Chadians signed up on the dotted line when they had to, but once the project was built, they kicked out the World Bank and more or less took over, and the president gave a big sort of amount of cash to his brother and bought guns to fight the Sudanese-backed rebels and what have you. You also have some difficulties that perhaps we can discuss. The Nigerian petroleum bill. People are a bit afraid that the Nigerians are about to turn the tables on the oil industry. I frankly think that the risks are much exaggerated, but we can discuss this in greater detail. We've already mentioned the Ghana Cosmos story, the fact that the Ghanaian government didn't want ExxonMobil to fight a big chunk of its sort of one of the big oil fields. But I think I'll use the remainder of my time very briefly to just emphasize to you perhaps the most important development in the normative field, in the field of sort of concern about that very terrible developmental record of the oil-rich countries that I mentioned before. And that has been sort of running parallel with the development of the oil in the ultra-deep waters, for instance. It's the newfound concern for these issues, for human rights, for the environment, for the quality of governance in these countries. Why do I say newfound? Because frankly, we've been around for 100 years, and this hasn't been made on all sides. Essentially, Western countries have a very realpolitik attitude towards African oil producers. Whatever they did with their money was their responsibility. And I remember when I started my research, I had an ExxonMobil, literally a Texan sort of man who could be alive, very, very tall. When I asked him questions about governance and politics, he said, the business of business is business. We pay them taxes. Whatever they do with it, it's their call. End of quote. Now, you wouldn't find anyone in a major oil corporation in the last 7 or 8 years who would tell you that. I think everyone understands that the largest taxpayers to a sovereign entity who sort of have a shared responsibility in the quality of the outcomes. And this started rather acrimoniously against the oil sector with the killing by the Nigerian military government in the mid-90s of the very famous human rights activist in the Niger Delta, Ken Saro-Wiwa. And for a few years, the agenda was mostly activists attacking companies like Shell. But then sooner or later, I think there were Western governments, Western oil companies themselves, came on board and embraced basic issues such as transparency. And I think my colleague mentioned the EITI, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, earlier on. I think these developments around 2002, 2003, 2004 were essential. It sort of made it clear that we have a shared responsibility. Perhaps something that wasn't said enough and is about to be said as we speak is the role of the Western banking industry in allowing capital flight away from countries like Nigeria and Angola for decades. And I'm not talking about the Cayman Islands, I'm talking about high street banks where we all bank on a daily basis. I think that's something that is still sort of being brought to the forefront. But otherwise, I think it's very important developments. However, schemes like EITI seem not to have worked out very well because they were voluntary schemes. And either companies or countries who decided to go ahead with sort of a transparency agenda, if they weren't followed by other companies, then they would find themselves in a very, very difficult situation. It would be disadvantageous from a commercial perspective, which is what happened to BP in Angola. They published what they had paid the Angolan government, and then they were caught in the Angolan government and sort of threatened them with expulsion. But this is my last point. Just in the last few months, there's been a crucial development. The US Congress has passed a law that actually makes it mandatory for companies registered in US stock exchanges to publish what they pay in a disaggregated fashion. And this is going to affect many companies, including Asian companies that are listed in the US. I think transparency is not a panacea. There are problems of governance, and I'm not trying to overemphasize the role of the oil companies or internationals. I think there's also an important local role. Local politicians have a lot to answer for in the tragic trajectory of their societies. But I think, bearing in mind that we all have a shared responsibility, I think this is a crucial development, and very soon the European Commission is going to put forward proposals in the direction of systematizing regulation in a way that will sort of fit what the Americans are doing in the same field. Whether this is enough for countries like Ghana, the new countries that are coming into the oil sector, to go beyond the resource curse and not become another Nigeria, I'm not sure.